Let's do it. Thanks for coming, guys. Obviously, Coach Dreiling here, so very excited. Kids got back a couple days ago. We gave them some time off the last few days of summer to go home and get rejuvenated with the fam before we come back and start this journey together. As you know, there have been twists and turns all over the road this summer, but one thing has been constant, and that's our kids' attitude. We've gotten closer together with every single day, it seems like, and really leaning in on each other as we handle things. There's been a bunch of adversity, but in that, man, that you can already see, right, what are these kids going to show and what's going to come out to this world once we come out swinging on the first game. So right now it's just getting back to the little things as we gear up for fall camp and making sure that we take care of us, and it's not about an opponent, but it's just about us getting better, and that's how we'll handle things both on and off the field, right, making just a 1 degree better every single day. So let's open up some questions.
Coach Jason Walker, Cash for the Daily at 1069thefan.com. Just want to ask about how the team has done as far as going through recent adversity with Blake and obviously with Andre Selden as well. How have you seen the team try to rally together and make it through this adversity?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. How have we rallied together? The adversity's been strong, right? You're on point. One thing we did put in place right away was a leadership council to making sure not necessarily just the seniors on the team, right, but voices of every class, walk-ons, everybody. My platform is to serve these players, and I don't know how to serve. I don't know what they need. So it's been a lot of listening to understand from my chair and making sure I give these guys everything they need to be successful both on and off the field. That being so, through those meetings, we've come up with great stuff as far as team building events and things like that. But honestly, it's just unsanctioned stuff where we're just hanging out around each other. My office is always open. One thing you guys will find out today as you meet more of these position coaches, it's a very genuine family here. Kids love being around, so they're up here nonstop. I would argue probably more than anybody in the country, not doing football, but just doing live stuff and hanging out with the coaches, and that's been huge for everybody.
Coach Dreiling, Eric Franson with 1069 The Fan. The process of assembling that staff and reassigning or changing roles with the staff that was here, what was that process like for you, and how did that process develop?
Yeah. Eric, right?
Yeah.
Slow. So I talked to a bunch of coaches when I got this job, right? And the biggest mistake they said you make is you try to move too fast. You don't know what you don't need necessarily. You don't know exactly who the best options are. So I was not rushed at all. The best part about this was I was able to bring my whole defensive staff with me. So every single one of those guys I've coached with at some point I know are phenomenal human beings and they're phenomenal teachers. That's why I hired them. So there wasn't a huge concern on needing to get someone in right now defensively. I'll continue to call it. So that'll look the same and as we move forward. And then offensively, as you guys know, it has been very successful here. So like I told the players, my first order as a head coach is to stay out of the offensive way. So how would I give those guys the platform to be successful? That's promoting Kyle Cefalo to offensive coordinator. I think as you guys have probably been around him, not only is he one of the best recruiters we have on the team if you look at his position room, right, but he's been in the system for 10-plus years, and he's essentially the brainchild of that offense. So he's going to have a very exciting year, and I have all the confidence in the world with him, as well as elevating Cooper Bassett from O-line coach to co-offensive coordinator as well, offensive line coach. Some additional staff members that we brought in. Defensively, one of my favorite people in the world, Dave Wiemers. He's a senior analyst for the defense. So I actually played for Coach Wiemers at Pittsburgh State when I was playing. I went back to Pittsburgh State and I coached underneath him, and then I got moved to defensive coordinator while there, and he got moved to offensive coordinator at Pitt. So we've known each other for a long time. I wanted to make sure for these kids I get the right people in this building, right? And it has nothing to do with football. That has everything to do with character and how they've raised young men. And that's how Dave is going to fit this role for us. And then on offense, Troy Morrill. So those of you who don't know, Troy was the head coach at Butler Community College for 10 to 15 years up until 2014. He won 3 national championships. He's like 155 and 20 or something like that as a head coach. So one thing I do have a lot of confidence in, what I've known I've been doing for a while, is managing staff and managing players. I wanted to make sure I wasn't blindsided by any head coaching stuff, that just the fear of I don't know what I don't know, right? So both of those guys have not only been head coaches but successful head coaches, so they will help making sure that we stay in check on that regards, as well as helping with the academics and community involvement will be a huge piece for them as well.
Nate
Trent Wood with Deseret News. You mentioned you don't know what you don't know about being a head coach. What have you learned so far? What surprised you of being a head coach versus being a coordinator?
Yeah, Trent, what is different about being a head coach, right? The best thing I have done, my agent is connected with a bunch of FBS coaches. I've probably annoyed almost every single FBS coach in the country to make sure I do have the answers. I may not know them right now, but I want to get everything before the players ask. So there's been a bunch of research since I got the first call from Diana on what to expect, what not to expect, right? Little things, how to handle certain situations that you're just not used to at a coordinator role. Coordinator role, you go from a position coach in this profession managing 10 kids to a coordinator, you're up at 50, and now a head coach at 150, right? So it is a lot more people, but it's a lot wider deal as opposed to just football. So learning how to handle the ops department, the community involvement, right? That's been awesome so far. That's why Dave and Troy bringing them in has been huge, as well as our chief of staff, Rachel Phillips, who's been the right-hand woman for Gary Patterson and for Coach Kill, her last 2 stops before following me here. So we have the best people off the field. There's not a doubt in my mind, and they've been tremendous for this as well.
Coach Alex Nahar with KSL. The dismissal of Blake and others has been talked about as a first step of resetting the culture of this program. As the head coach now, what do you kind of want to do as one of the stewards of that culture in order to be what the administration wants it to be?
Well, I think the first thing is stability, and that's not just winning football games consistently. That's for the fan base, that's for the community, that's for academics. If you just look at Utah State, there's upswings and downswings. So how can we just keep the trajectory going where we want? Ultimately, that's getting the right people in here, and that's getting the right players in here. We have an unbelievable foundation of student athletes that want to be successful, and I think you guys will see with the players that we brought in, even since post-spring ball. It's 2 characteristics: great football players, but even more importantly, great men, right? So that's how we're going to, continue to improve this culture, but also improve our image drastically across the whole state. Secondly, it goes to how we recruit. My dad was my high school head coach, so my whole life I've been dealing with high school coaches. Half my friends are high school coaches. So that is going to be our lifeline in recruiting as well. And that starts with this state. The state of Utah, right? We had 48 guys go Division I football last year. So that number is anywhere from 25 to 45 typically on average. So there's no reason we shouldn't have 10 to 15 players every single year. And if we don't get guys, because maybe they do get offers, we get them when they come back home and they want to come back to close to Salt Lake or stay in Logan. But it's those type of people that we know have the values that we want. Not just on the football field, but that the community is going to be proud of.
Coach,
Sorry.
Go ahead. Okay. Jason Turner from the Herald-Journal. I just wanted to ask you, do you have anything specifically in mind to honor Andre Seldon throughout the course of the season?
Jason, you the man. I'm going to tear up. Andre, this kid, I wish you guys would have been around him. He is one of my favorite people ever. I won't even talk about what type of player he was, but he is a just kid that is always smiling, always loving. I told him at his ceremony we had here on the field for this family last Thursday. Every single conversation with me and Andre started with one of us making fun of each other, and every single conversation ended with a hug, right? And that's the type of relationship I had with him, and that's the type of relationship we hope to have with every one of these kids in the building. So he's meant so much for me. But that being said, me and 3 other coaches are hopping on a jet right after this and flying to his funeral back in Detroit tomorrow. So we had to adjust practice and meetings and everything. So practice got moved to tomorrow night so we can make it back in time. So fortunately, one of our donors helped us out on that. And we'll continue to honor him, and you'll see a bunch of different patches and stuff like that the coaches are wearing throughout the season. But thank you for that question.
Coach Greg Hislop with KVNU Radio. Did you have to do a recruiting job with Coach Morrow? He's been out of football for a while, hasn't he?
I had to work my rear end off, and not that he didn't want to get back in, but he was at an unbelievable situation at his current job. He was running a multi-million-dollar organization on the East Coast out of Boston and being very successful outside of the football world. But I could tell with my first phone call to him, this was our guy for sure, and 2, we had a good chance. The reason he got out of football was to spend more time with his family because he was missing too many games. And now that his kids are grown and not involved in college or high school athletics, he has more time on his hands, and he's been itching to get back in. So we had 3 or 4 conversations, and I made sure that I was going to do whatever I could to get this guy in the building. You'll see him walking around, but he's about as good as it gets, and not even talking about winning football games, but as far as developing a young man. Like his last job, he's literally, I called him 4 days ago before he took the job, and he was teaching a leadership course to his entire staff there. So he does way more than win football games. He develops people, and that's what we need more.
Nate, it says here that you're the youngest coach in FBS. I'm just curious how that makes you feel.
Being the youngest coach, I know it makes my mom feel proud. If you look at her Facebook page, you're going to see Utah State Aggies all over. She's got a fan club for Western Kansas Utah State Aggies fans. So I hope she's not watching this. She's over the top, but they are awfully proud, and that means a lot. I honestly don't care too much about it, right? I just need to make sure that that doesn't mean that I don't have enough wisdom to be successful for these players, and that's why hirings are important.
What did you do specifically to get 40-some new people, players, incorporated into this team quickly?
Yeah. How do we get the turnaround so fast to get these players bought in is the most important thing, right? And that's ongoing. So majority of them have been here this summer, and that's what Diane talked about. Like Coach Paul Jackson is absolutely phenomenal. One, with how he develops these kids, but 2, creating like competition environment. We split guys into teams, so now you're not always hanging around the same positions or offense, defense, but getting them around other people. As you guys, I'm sure know, like the most talented team doesn't always win, but it's a team that's going to fight the hardest for one another. And that's what summertime is for, and that's what PJAC does best. And then ultimately, we're going to have so much things for fall camp because there are some new additions, even the last couple of weeks. Getting these kids around, more familiar, not just offense and defense or position-wise, but you have to know every single kid in this room if you're going to be successful, and we'll make sure we handle that.
Coach Dreiling, you alluded to at Mountain West Media Day some more New Mexico State transfers coming in. I see they're officially on the roster now with Gabe Peterson and Torrin Union. So what can you tell us about them and why they're a good fit for Utah State?
Sure. I'll start with Gabe Peterson. So Gabe, I recruited. I was his only offer at FCS, Southeast Missouri State. Then I took the job at New Mexico State, and I was his only offer in the FBS at New Mexico State. So he is a Kansas kid. He actually played my dad's school. My dad called me after the game and said, "You got to offer this kid." So I've known him and his family for a long time. But he is what Aggie Nation wants. He is someone that is extremely tough, right, and ultimately is a phenomenal student and is going to walk around with a smile and make everyone proud. So he is a player that started as a true freshman at New Mexico State, then had an unbelievable sophomore campaign, left New Mexico State after we all did, and luckily I was fortunate enough to get him here not too long ago. But he's going to be a great addition to help with the depth for that outside linebacker room. And then Torrin Union. Torrin, if you guys start talking with him, you're going to have a hard time of walking away because this kid he's going to talk his jaw off, and you're going to love everything he says. He is so great for the locker room, first off, because how he lightens the mood. He always has a huge smile on his face. But then athletically, he's going to play that nickel position for us, which is one of the hardest spots in all of football to play. You got to fit the run. You got to cover someone man to man. You have to know just about every technique in the book. But both of those guys, will have to come here and they'll have to earn their spot. I didn't promise them anything, but at worst, they're going to provide depth and they're going to make sure the locker room is where we want it to be.
I just piggyback off that question because you got a couple of other guys coming with you from Mexico State, Gabe Niguez and Jordan Vincent.
Yes.
And what can you tell about these guys that you coached before?
Sure. New guys that came with me from New Mexico State. What can I tell you about them? First off, if I brought them from New Mexico State, that meant their character is unbelievable. And so, like with Jordan Vincent and Gabriel Niguez, those guys have been here for 6 months, and both of them were top 10 in captain voting, right? And not that we didn't have unbelievable leadership here, but those guys just carried themselves a different way. Jordan was a all-conference player for us, safety at New Mexico State. One of the toughest kids I've ever been around from Chicago. Awesome human being. That's going to also help that room, that safety room. That safety room is very top heavy with returners and older players and a bunch of young guys that we need to make sure that they can go in, and that's what he's going to help a lot. And then Gabriel Iniguez may look very intimidating when you stare at him, but he's a big teddy bear. Don't be scared of that guy. He is phenomenal though. He's the heart and soul of New Mexico State. Him and Andre both were. One thing about him, he's going to outwork whoever it is. And that's what I want. I want tough kids who are hardworking, who have the same core values that I believe in, right, and that I want this program to represent. And that's what all those New Mexico State guys will have to do. But keep in mind, no one's handing any jobs out. They're earning everything they get.
What would you consider a successful season?
Successful season. On a personal level, if it's 6 months from now and I'm looking back and I can honestly tell myself I gave these kids everything I could for them to be successful and serve them how I want to serve them and get this program and this culture at the top level in all of college football, like that'll be success. And then on the field, there's no reason that we shouldn't be competing for a Mountain West championship. I got brought in to help fix a defense, and I think you guys probably attest. If you guys had a great defense last year, you probably making a run for the Mountain West championship. So we don't feel like offensively they finished 19th, I think, in the country last year in total offense, and there's no reason that shouldn't be top 10 with who we have and the quarterback we have back with Spencer. And then defensively, right, we brought this staff in and a couple players, but the foundation is here with the kids, and they're all believing in. And one thing we do on defense is we don't talk necessarily, it's not what you do, but it's how you do it. And for my expertise, we spend a lot of time on the how, giving these players the tools to be successful. So we're going to fix the defense. There's not a doubt in my mind. The offense is going to roll like they always have, and we're going to get back to competing for Mountain West championships. That'll be a successful year.
How much of fixing the defense is fixing the issues they had last year or implementing what you want to do?
So that's an unbelievable question. How do you fix the defense in a hurry? So one of the main reasons I took this job, it was very similar to my New Mexico State job. When I got to New Mexico State the year before, they were ranked 127th in the college football, right? And there's 134 teams, so pretty close to dead last. So one thing that was similar about this place was they were ranked, upper 100s. But one thing I knew for sure, if you have been that bad, you are going to soak up information and knowledge and want it. You want to be a sponge, because two things happen. You get tired of people telling you how bad you are, right? And then you have a huge chip on your shoulder for the exact same reason. So as soon as I walked in the room, they were all ears and they've been unbelievable. So that's more so like they had plenty of talent last year, right? We just got to make sure we spend the how time and give the kids the tools to be successful and get the confidence rolling. There's no reason defensively that we shouldn't be the best or one of the best defenses in the Mountain West, and that's our goal. We're not there yet, and I let the kids know exactly where we stand when I do meet with them. But we are getting closer. We're making huge strides. Fall camp is going to be fun. One thing you guys are going to see about this defense is that we're going to have unbelievable depth. And you have to. If our offense is going to go try to score 60 points to win the game, right, you better have two sets of starters. That's why fall camp is going to be fun in building that depth as well.
What's the depth at running back now?
Depth at running back is good. You got Razul, who's coming back off of close to 900 yards or so, maybe a little over. You got Robert Briggs. Those two will kind of be the 1-2 punch that we have, and as well as brought in a couple JUCO kids. So with that offense, we're mainly a one-back system that goes fast, so they don't sub overly out. We do need two tailbacks, and we feel like with those guys, the best part about it, both of them can take it the distance any play. Not to mention who you have out wide at wide receiver with Jalen Royals. And I keep talking about Spencer. The spring he had at quarterback is unbelievable. And if this offense was successful last year, he is going to blow the roof off this thing.
Hey, Coach RJ South, Cincinnati Sports Radio Network. You've done a heck of a job, to keep the kids from hitting that portal. You do lose Michael Davis, but is there any other expectations of losing anybody else, or you pretty much signed to let everyone to stay here?
One thing that's been awesome is because these guys can, it's college football, you can go wherever you want. Seeing how much they love it here, right? Some people at media day thought it was going to be a mass exit and everyone's going to be gone. You can't replace anybody, but I think it's a testament to how we treat these players. Like, they don't want to go. Like, we have had guys receive offers and money offers NIL all over the country. And they've consistently turned them down because of how they're treated in here, how they know they're going to be developed on the field, but even more so off the field. So I think it's a testament to this coaching staff being able to keep this thing in place. And are we going to lose another guy? You know, I don't know about hypotheticals, but I do know the players are here, are extremely happy, and they're ready to work.
Coach Patrick Mayborn from the Ag Ship, you've mentioned a couple times, you know, they're not there yet, but you'll get them there. What tells you that they're there? What tells you that a team is getting there or making that progress?
Yeah, Patrick, good question. What tells a team that they're there and you know? And I tell them all the time, if I don't have to say anything at practice, we're there. If I'm still coaching people, right, and people, don't get me wrong, people will make mistakes all the time. My wife still always yells at me, right, and we're 6 years in. But if I can have a senior or a starter fix that player before I can, then we're there. If I'm still having to correct because those guys aren't helping the people below, then we're not building the depth that we need. So as soon as you don't hear me talking at practice, right, you know we're pretty close. Good question.
So what can you tell us about the linebacker position? Because you've got a lot of returners at safety. There's some returners at defensive line. There's not a whole lot of experience, at least from last year, returning in that linebacker room. How do you expect that to kind of play out with some of the guys you got there?
That is the biggest question mark on paper, right? Let's talk about who we got coming back first, all right? That was on the team. So we got Big Max. Max, as you guys know, tore his ACL in the Iowa game, but he is way ahead of schedule, and he's going to be practicing here in the next couple of days, coming off that knee injury. And we feel like he should be one of the best linebackers in the Mountain West. On top of that, you have Bronson, you have Cole Joyce, you have JP, you have a bunch of guys that has played a bunch of snaps. Maybe not in that starter role, but in that reserve role, right, in building depth. So we have that whole crew coming, and then we do have a bunch of additions. We got Clyde Washington. Clyde's coming from University of Purdue. He played 350 snaps last year in the Big Ten, and meaningful snaps. Like, he started at Sam linebacker for him. He wanted a bigger role. I've had great relationships with Kevin Kane, their defensive coordinator, and he said, "You're absolutely crazy if you don't take this guy." And he's been phenomenal so far. You also have John Ross May. Awesome story, because just like me, John was at a Division II school, one of the best D2 linebackers in the country last year, filled up the stat sheet, and he's been phenomenal this summer, as well as John Miller coming from Oregon State. So 3 linebackers who have all played a bunch of football, have a bunch of production, but probably even more importantly are phenomenal leaders and very smart kids. At linebacker, like, I was slower than I'm sure all of you guys in here, and I ended up making a bunch of tackles, not because I was fast or athletic, but because you're a smart player. And that's what we brought in, and that's what Coach Bobby McMillan, our inside linebacker coach, that's what he develops, I think, better than anybody in the country, is football IQ in that room. And that's going to be a shining point. That's a huge question mark right now, but it's going to be a shining point by the end of the season.
Both of the offensive and defensive lines look bigger. Would that be true?
Yeah, I was going to question your eyesight, but finally something that makes sense coming over there. That's exactly right. We need to get longer. You with me? Football is you don't have to be tall necessarily. You do have to have long arms, right? It's like when you put your head on your little nephew so he can't punch you type deal. So trying to get that mindset and develop what our prototype players look like and staying true to that model. Now, I'm not saying we're not going to take a short player, but we won't have a room full of exceptions is one thing that we try to stay true on. And length is a huge thing for us moving forward.
Coach Dreiling, Eric Francis with 169 The Fan again. You kind of talked about some of the players that have come from Division II or FCS and kind of moved up, and then even from a place like New Mexico State to Utah State, where it is we'll call it a bigger conference,
Absolutely.
if you will. And you've experienced that personally through coaching as well. So how do you help these players make that adjustment and get ready for arguably what should be a bigger challenge playing at this school in this league?
Eric, how do I help players adjust that are moving up a level? The first thing I do is I stay out of their way, because they know they're not going to be successful until they have a voice, and you can't have a voice until you outwork people. You with me? And that's where our homework comes in. If you look at our portal success rate from New Mexico State, if we brought a kid in, he was going to be successful because of our background checks. One, we're going to bring in the hardest workers that just left the school. Like, you could be talented, and if you're not a hard worker, you're not going to survive here. That's not the DNA, and that's not the product that we want to put on the field for this community. So I let those guys outwork people. I let them grow the voice, right? And then we start molding. But that's the order. Those guys know when they come in, and I tell them all the time when I'm recruiting them, if someone tells you you're going to go be a starter, like, you should go run away fast. Because how many people is he telling that to? All I've told every single one of those guys is that we're going to develop you both on and off the field better than anybody in the country, and I truly believe that. But they still have to earn it. So if we bring a guy in, you'll know that he's a very hardworking human being, and they're going to earn the right. But ultimately, we're bringing him for a reason to be successful as well.
And just to follow up, as a person, as a coach, it's your relationship with Blake Anderson that brought you here to Utah State originally.
Mm-hmm.
What was that relationship like with working with him, at least in the 6 months or fewer that you had here on campus working with him?
Yeah. So Blake has been nothing but phenomenal. You know, one of the reasons I took this job, as I'm sure you guys know, my wife was going through breast cancer last January when I was kind of on the job market and looking around. And obviously with Blake's pass, I knew he was going to be very forgiving and letting me miss stuff that I'd have to miss to be there for my wife. But he's been phenomenal for me, and it was that 6 months was very good for me and Lex, and he allowed a lot of stuff for me to be away. So I am very appreciative of him. But at the same time, our kids know, like, you know, you don't know the twists and turns in life, but you do know that tough people rise to the top. So we got to lean into each other and be able to make a run out of this.
Nate, is Spencer QB1 right now? Do you consider him QB1, or how not contentious?
Sure.
How much competition is there at the quarterback?
Yeah, it's Spencer the quarterback. Yes, he is quarterback one. I truly believe that he is one of the best throwing quarterbacks in the country. And I think here in a couple weeks, you guys will see and say that as well. I do love that whole quarterback room. Just like I met with every single quarterback and every single offensive player, but I told the quarterback the same thing. Like, you, in my mind, win football games with a great defense and a tough quarterback. And whether you're talking about Bryson or CJ that came over from Boise, all of those guys, like, the team wants to play for and wants to work for and will do anything for. And if you have that case, whether it's the first quarterback or third quarterback, then you have a chance to be successful. That's why that quarterback room is going to be fun. Even moving forward the following years, you are going to have a tough guy at the reins, and that's what I'm excited about.
Nate, traditionally, the last couple of years, this program has been pretty penalty-prone, is a good way to put it.
Sure.
How do you feel about penalties? What's your approach on them? How do you feel about discipline to limit them, or is that not important?
So the biggest thing for me is what are these penalties? Are these unsportsmanlike fouls? Like, no. That comes down to controlling your emotions. If you can't control your emotions, you can't control anything, right? So it's important that how we practice and how we prepare, we put a lot of strain on our guys, so when it comes to game day, life is easy. If we're having to do stuff extra during the game that we couldn't handle in practice, emotionally or physically, that's when people get out of line, right? And that's how that stuff shows. But ultimately, you know, it was funny talking with and listening to our players. Like, the one thing they wanted to improve on was that right there, was discipline, self-discipline, and team discipline. So we put some things in place as soon as I took the job over to help encourage, I'll say, people to make sure that where they need to be on time. But it has to be little things, as you guys know. Like, it has to be, all right, then if we're on study hall at 8 o'clock, if you're not there at 8 and not early, then there has to be consequences. And you have to build it from the inside out. If not, you just can't be disciplined on game days. So helping develop that at a very fast rate, because you look at some of the best teams in the country, and they're almost always penalty-free. And the ones that I can't stand are personal fouls and pre-snap. If you accidentally hold someone, cool. You know, that's football. You'll get through that. But we will do a huge job as far as limiting pre-snap and personal fouls. That'll be in the game plan. Anything else we're not good at that I need to know?
I got one more. I want to ask about situational defense. Something that always kind of stood out to me watching New Mexico State, watching your defense last year, was when 3rd and 4th down came around later on in the game. It just seems like they always made a play. It seems like they always stepped up and did something. How do you establish that with the defense? How do you get that mentality into them that they step up on those situational plays?
That is a phenomenal question. How do you get your guys ready for the big moment, essentially, right? So for me, it goes right to football IQ. One thing that I love doing, we have a unit meeting every single day on defense, right? And so all of my position coaches have something, whether it's block destruction, turnover, tackling, pursuit. We speak on everything, and then I speak on football IQ. What we try to do and how we accelerate winning and on our defense is that if one guy makes a mistake, you will not see that mistake again, right? And we handle it for the whole team, whether it's a D tackle jumping off sides on 3rd and 2. What do you think they're going to do on 3rd and 2, right? No one else needs to have that learning lesson. So we do capitalize, I think, with our teachers, but that goes back to having the football players that want to listen as well, and understanding situations because, listen, teams lose more football games than they win, and I think you guys probably believe that just watching football. So how can we make sure when the time gets big, our players know how to handle that situations, right, and prepared, right, and are staying ahead of the chains. So that's a great question, but that comes with a lot of hours in this room right here, right where you're sitting. Anything else? Awesome. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming, and enjoy the time with the players. You'll love them.